Ever wondered what the future of cars could have looked like if manufacturers weren't so afraid to experiment? Well, back in the 1960s, car makers threw caution to the wind, trying out ideas that would either crash and burn or change the world forever. From tiny engines borrowed from motorcycles to V8s cooled by air instead of water, the 60s were an era where engineering was as wild as the imagination itself. Some of these ideas were total failures, while others, they changed everything. Let's take a ride back in time to explore 10 cars that were truly different under the hood. BMW 700. Let's start with a car you probably didn't expect. The BMW 700. You might be surprised, but in the late 50s, BMW was nearly on the brink of collapse. Despite the gorgeous 507 Roadster, the company was bleeding money. The Isetta, though quirky and charming, couldn't save them. Then came the 700, a small boxy sedan powered by a motorcycle engine. Yes, you heard that right, a boxer engine from BMW's motorcycle line. It was light, surprisingly quick for its size, and cost-effective. Giovanni Michelotti's sleek design gave it a European charm that helped it stand out. But here's the kicker. It didn't just save BMW. It laid the foundation for the legendary 2002, and ultimately, the brand we know today. Even racing legend Hans Stuck was a fan, taking it on hill climbs. The BMW 700 wasn't just a car. It was the lifeline that kept BMW alive. Chevrolet Corvair. Now, let's talk about the Chevrolet Corvair, a car that could have forever changed American automotive design. Imagine this, a rear-engine, air-cooled, boxer six-cylinder engine in a country that worshipped big front-engine V8s. Sounds crazy, right? If you'd never seen the badge, you'd probably guess this was a European car, not something from Detroit. The Corvair was everything the American car industry wasn't supposed to be. It even turned the engine the opposite way, making mechanics scratch their heads. It ran quietly, handled better than most of its American contemporaries, until it hit a few corners, and had a reputation for being a little unsafe. Thanks to Ralph Nader's famous book Unsafe at Any Speed, the Corvair was labeled the villain of the decade. But here's where the plot twists. Enthusiasts took the Corvair and turned it into serious race cars, like the Yanko Stinger. Was it unfairly judged? Maybe. But one thing's certain, the Corvair proved American engineers could think outside the box, if they really wanted to. Isuzu Bello. Let's shift gears and talk about something a little off the beaten path. The Isuzu Bello. Not the prettiest car Japan ever produced, but boy, did it make a statement. This was Isuzu's first completely in-house car, after years of building the Hillman Minx under license. What made it stand out? It was Japan's first ever diesel engine in a passenger car. While the rest of the world was chasing performance, Isuzu went for efficiency. Taxi drivers loved it. It was reliable, lasted forever, and sipped fuel like a monk sipping water. Sure, it was a little noisy and looked like it was drawn with a ruler, but it proved that Japan wasn't just about small, quirky cars. They could build serious engines too. Would it have been a classic today? Hard to say, but the Bello's place in automotive history is solid. Matra Bonnet Jet. Now, let's talk about a car that most people have never heard of, the Matra Bonnet Jet. This little French gem quietly revolutionized car design, becoming the world's first production car with a rear mid-engine. Long before Lamborghini or Ferrari made it famous, this French carmaker, René Bonnet, with help from Matra, crafted this lightweight beauty using aerospace technology. The jet's body was made of fiberglass, and its handling was way ahead of its time. Imagine driving a car that felt like a racing prototype, but on the streets. It didn't sell well, though, and after Bonnet went bankrupt, Matra took over and improved the design until 1967. But this little car sparked an entirely new era of mid-engine sports cars. And who knows? Maybe it's the unsung hero that inspired some of the biggest names in motorsport. Oldsmobile Jetfire. This next car might sound like it came straight out of a science fiction movie, the Oldsmobile Jetfire. A sleek American coupe with a small aluminum V8 engine. It was the first car ever to feature a turbocharger in mass production. But hold on, it gets crazier. To stop engine knock, Oldsmobile added a turbo rocket fluid, basically a methanol water mix. Sounds pretty fancy, right? But here's the problem. Most owners didn't know they had to refill it. Without it, the car would lose power, stall, and eventually the turbocharger would be completely removed by most owners. A shame, really, because when it worked, the Jetfire was smooth, fast, and an absolute game-changer. It showed what could be done with a turbocharger decades before it became mainstream. Ambitious, brilliant, but simply too ahead of its time. Chrysler Turbine Car. Speaking of wild ideas, this one might blow your mind, a Chrysler with a jet engine. Yes, you read that right. In 1963, Chrysler built 50 turbine cars, complete with a turbine engine that could run on almost anything, from diesel to kerosene and even tequila. Imagine rolling up to a gas station and asking for a fill-up with Chanel No. 5. The car was smooth, almost eerily quiet at idle, with a sound straight out of a sci-fi movie. But there was a catch: the fuel efficiency and heat management were its downfall. The project ended, and most of these test cars were destroyed. But the dream of the jet-age car was real, even if it didn't last. What if Chrysler had pushed it further? Who knows? We're living in the electric age now, but sometimes it's fun to imagine a world with jet-powered cars. Panhard CD. Here's a car that proves speed isn't all about horsepower. The Panhard CD. Built by Charles Deutsch, this car had an aerodynamic design that still stands out today, with a drag coefficient of just 0.22. Under its sleek fiberglass body was a tiny two-cylinder engine, weak by any standards, but the car's efficiency was something else. In 1962, it raced at Le Mans and won its class, not because it was the fastest, but because it was the most efficient. The Panhard CD was an underdog in every sense of the word. It wasn't about raw power. It was about intelligence and innovation. And sometimes, isn't that the best kind of engineering? Cars like this prove that brains can beat brawn. Tatra 603. Next up, we have the Tatra 603, a car that could easily be mistaken for a Cold War spy vehicle. Built behind the Iron Curtain, this sleek, bold car wasn't for the average citizen. Only high-ranking officials and party members could get their hands on one. But the real kicker? It had a rear-mounted, air-cooled V8 engine. Not a monster of power, but it was enough to effortlessly move its streamlined body. And get this, early versions had a rotating headlamp that turned with the steering. How cool is that? The Tatra 603 wasn't perfect, but it had this mysterious charm, something that no Western car could match at the time. It was quiet, smooth, and powerful in its own way, a true symbol of its time. Porsche 911. When we think of iconic cars, the Porsche 911 is often at the top of the list. But did you know it wasn't supposed to be iconic at all? Originally, the Porsche 911 was just a continuation of the 356. But when it hit the market in 1964, it felt different. A rear-mounted, air-cooled six-cylinder boxer engine in an era dominated by front-engine sports cars? It was strange, but somehow it worked. The 911 felt alive, energetic, and demanding, but deeply rewarding once you got the hang of. Porsche initially called it the 901, until Peugeot claimed the 0 in the middle. That's when it became the 911, a name that would go on to define an entire generation of sports cars. Even today, the 911 carries the heart of that original design, and it's still as unique as ever. Honda S600. Last but not least, we have the Honda S600, an unassuming little roadster that caught everyone off guard. At first glance, it looked like a toy compared to the European roadsters of the time. But when you heard it scream, you'd know this wasn't just any car. The 606 cubic centimeters engine could hit nearly 10,000 revolutions per minute, unheard of for a street car back then. Honda packed everything they knew from motorcycles into the S600: lightweight, precision engineering, and pure fun. It wasn't about brute force. It was about joy, performance, and innovation. And when you hear that engine rev, you'll smile. It's cars like the S600 that remind us why we love driving. The 60s were a playground for engineers willing to dream.